Welcome back to the deep dive. We are doing something a little different today. Usually we take a stack of articles or, a book and we kind of skim the surface, hitting the high notes. Yeah, let's set the stage here. We live in an era of spiritual but not religious, right? I think we all know that vibe. It's the idea that the spirit of the law matters more than the letter.
The vibe over the verb. That's a great way to put it.
Exactly. I mean, I hear it all the time. People say things like, I don't need to go to a specific building to pray. The whole world is my temple.
Or, my charity is being a good person and having a good heart.
Right. Or, fasting isn't about food. It's about fasting from negativity.
Yeah.
And honestly, it sounds good. It sounds evolved.
It does.
It sounds like we've graduated from the basic rules.
It sounds sophisticated. It appeals to us because it feels like we're focusing on the essence rather than the container. But the source material we're diving into today argues that this mindset, this metaphorical approach, isn't an evolution. They argue it's a demolition.
A demolition. That is a strong word.
It is. The sources call this process semantic deletion.
Semantic deletion.
Yeah. The argument is that when you turn a specific physical command into a vague internal metaphor, you aren't interpreting it. You are deleting it. You are effectively taking an eraser to the page.
Wow. So the question we're grappling with today is pretty high stakes. Is fasting just silence? Is charity just having a good heart?
Right.
Is prayer just a feeling of connection? Or does the book we're discussing, the Quran, actually function as a manual, a physical, actionable, do this, then do that kind of manual?
That is the central tension, the metaphor versus the manual.
Okay, so before we get into the specific examples, and we have some wild ones involving battlefields and whales and tax collectors.
Of course we do. We have to start with the foundation. The sources keep coming back to this one phrase, Kitabun Mubin.
Yes. You absolutely cannot understand their argument without this phrase. It appears in verses like 12.1, 15.1, 26.2. Kitabun Mubin.
Okay, so translate that for us. What are we talking about?
Literally, it means the manifest book, or more commonly, the clear book.
Clear. It's such a simple word, but I feel like in this context it's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It is doing all the lifting. Think about it this way. If I hand you a book of, abstract poetry and 19th century symbolist stuff, and I ask you, what does this mean? What do you say?
I mean, it means whatever I feel like it means. That's kind of the point of poetry. It's subjective. It's art. If I think the blue curtains represent depression, then for me, they represent depression.
Right. There is no wrong answer in poetry. But now, imagine I hand you a flight manual for a Boeing 747.
Okay, very different scenario. And the manual says, before takeoff, engage the hydraulic pumps. And you look at that and say, well, to me, hydraulic pumps is a metaphor for my internal emotional pressure, so I'm just going to take a deep breath instead of flipping the switch.
What happens?
The plane crashes, people die.
Boom! That is the entire argument the sources are making. The Quran defines itself as Kitabun Mubin, the clear book. It is identifying itself as the flight manual, not the poetry collection.
So when the sources see people interpreting a command like wash your face as cleanse your soul, they aren't just annoyed from a theological perspective.
No, it's more urgent than that.
They're saying you are treating the flight manual like a haiku and you're going to crash the plane. The plane being the community, I guess.
That is the perfect analogy. The thesis here is this. If the book claims to be clear, then the default interpretation must be the direct, physical, actionable one. If you have to do mental gymnastics to turn a physical command into a psychological state, you're violating the user manual. I love that setup. So we're going to test this thesis. We have a roadmap. We're going to look at 4 specific pillars: Salat, prayer, dua, supplication; Siyam, fasting; and Zakat, charity.
And Hajj, the pilgrimage.
And Hajj, right. And we're going to look for what the sources call forensic evidence.
Yeah, we're going to be detectives today. We're looking at logistics, geography, biology, and economics to see if this stuff holds up.
I'm ready. Let's jump into the first one. And this is probably the biggest battlefield in the debate. Salat, or the prayer.
The big one.
Now, I'll play the devil's advocate here, because the modern view of Salat is very, very appealing.
It is.
People say Salat implies connection. So as long as I am mindful of God, as long as I'm living with integrity and connected to the divine source, I am in Salat. I don't need to do the up-down movements. I don't need the rug. I've, transcended the ritual.
It's a very seductive idea. I don't need the training wheels anymore. It appeals to the ego because it makes you the arbiter of your own worship. You decide when you're connected.
Right. It feels personal. It feels constant. Why is that wrong? according to these sources?
Well, the source material throws a few logical wrenches into that machinery. The first one is simple. Time.
Time.
Yes, time. Verse 4.103 explicitly says that Salat is prescribed for believers at specified times. Kitabun Mubin.
Specified times.
Now, look at your watch. A state of mind doesn't have a schedule. You don't say, I'm going to be in a state of integrity from 1.00 p.m. to 1.15 p.m., and then I'll stop.
That's a good point. Integrity is supposed to be 204/7. Honesty is supposed to be 204/7. If Salat is just being good, why is there a clock attached to it?
Exactly. If it's a constant state of being, the specified times command becomes, well, it becomes nonsense. It's redundant.
Okay, so that's hurdle number 1. What's next?
The next one is hygiene. Verse 5.6. This is the famous command for Wudu, the ablution.
This is the washing up before prayer.
Yes, and the verse is incredibly specific. It's almost anatomical. It says, wash your faces and your forearms to the elbows, wipe over your heads, and wash your feet to the ankles.
Wow, okay. Elbows and ankles.
To the elbows, to the ankles. If Salat is a metaphorical connection, a state of mind, why do you need to wash your elbows?
Right. I need to scrub my forearms to get my soul ready.
It doesn't track, does it?
Yeah.
You don't wash your skin to achieve internal integrity.
Yeah.
You wash your body to prepare for a physical act. The specificity of the anatomy, elbows, ankles, it anchors the entire ritual in the physical world. It's not floating around in your head.
That's a strong point. The literalness of it is hard to ignore, but those are just the warm-ups.
They are.
The documents we reviewed feature what they call the knockout punch. And I have to say, when I read this section in the prep, I actually stopped and stared at the wall for a minute. It's verse 4.102.
Battlefield argument. This is, for them, the definitive proof.
Set the scene for us, because this isn't a normal, peaceful prayer scenario.
No, not at all. The context here is Salat Al Khawf, the prayer of fear. You are on an active battlefield. The enemy is visible. You can hear them. Death is on the line. And the Quran pauses the action to give instructions on how to perform Salat right there, in the mud and the danger.
So, okay, let's pause and really visualize this. I'm a soldier. I've got a sword or a spear. My heart is pounding. The enemy is just over that ridge.
Adrenaline is pumping. You're in fight or flight mode. Now, if Salat were just a state of mind or connection, what would the instructions be?
I assume it would be something like, stay sharp, keep your eyes on the enemy, but remember God in your heart. Keep your internal connection strong while you fight. Something practical.
That would be the logical, metaphorical instruction. Stay prayerful while you combat. But that is not what verse 4.102 says. It's not even close.
So what does it say?
It's pure logistics. It commands the believers to divide into two distinct groups. It's a troop rotation.
Troop rotation.
Yes.
Sure.
Group A stands guard, holding their weapons, facing the enemy. Group B, meanwhile, performs the physical prostration. They put their foreheads on the ground.
Hold on, they have to put their heads on the ground. In a war zone, that seems strategically terrible. You're completely vulnerable.
It's incredibly vulnerable. That's why Group A is standing guard. Their job is to protect the people who are prostrating.
Okay, and what?
Then, once Group B finishes their prostration, they get up and they physically swap places. Group B grabs the weapons and stands guard, and Group A comes forward to prostrate.
It's choreography. It's a military drill.
It is literally a logistical protocol for troop movement under fire. Now, the expert in the source material asks a devastating question. Why on earth would you need troop rotations, weapon handling, and physical coordination if Salat was just a mental state of submission?
Yeah, you can't metaphor your way out of a troop rotation. You don't need to swap places with the guy behind you just to feel submissive.
Precisely. If Salat's a feeling, you can have that feeling while you're holding the sword and watching the horizon. You don't need to stop and put your face in the dirt.
It's the opposite of what you'd do, actually. You'd want everyone on high alert, not half the force with their heads down.
From a purely military standpoint, it's a risk. The fact that the Quran demands this physical action, even when it is dangerous to do so, proves that the physical action is the point. It's non-negotiable.
That is. Yeah, that's hard to argue with. It turns the metaphor argument into a strategic absurdity.
It makes verse 4.102 the most inefficient military advice in history if it's just about a feeling. But if it's about a physical covenant, a public, disciplined display of allegiance to your commander, even under threat, then the logistics make perfect sense. It's a test of discipline.
Wow. So the battlefield proves the physicality, but the sources don't just stop at logistics, they go into the language itself. And this was one of my favorite parts, the horse race etymology. I had never heard this before.
It is fascinating linguistics. So the word salat comes from the root SLW. Modern abstractors look at that and say, oh, it means connection. And it does, in a sense, but that's a very thin understanding. We have to look at how the ancient Arabs used that root in their world.
Okay, so take us to the desert. Tell us about the horses.
In a traditional Arab horse race, the terms were very specific. The winner, the first horse to cross the line, is called the sabiq.
The sabiq.
But the second horse, the one that follows so closely that its head is right near the first horse's flank or tail, that horse is called the muzali.
The muzali, that's the active participle of salat, the one who performs salat.
Exactly. So the imagery here isn't just connection, like a static Wi-Fi signal. It's following. It's a disciplined, close, relentless following of a leader or a path.
So it's not a passive state.
Not at all. Just like that second horse locks into the pace of the first, the person performing salat locks into the divine command. It's dynamic. It involves movement and pacing and discipline. You're actively chasing something.
That is such a cool image. It's not about sitting still and feeling good. It's about keeping up. It's about the chase. But what about the specific movements? The words ruku and sujud.
Right.
We see these translated as bowing and prostrating, but the metaphorical crowd says these are just symbols for humility and submission.
Right. They'll say, I bow my ego, not my body. But the source material, again, it goes back to the roots. RK for ruku literally means to bend the torso. It's a physical description.
Okay.
And there's a verse, 2.433, that says, bow with those who bow. Kurka'u ma'araki.
With those who bow. That sounds communal.
It implies synchronization. It's a group activity. How do you synchronize an internal feeling of humility? Okay, guys, on the count of 3, let's all feel really humble. 1, 2, 3.
You can't see it. I can't tell if you're being humble or if you're just thinking about lunch.
Exactly. You can only synchronize a physical action. But the strongest argument for the physicality of the prostration, the sujud, this one comes from the angels.
The angelic argument. This is based on verse 2.34, right? The story of Adam.
Correct. This is the moment God creates Adam and commands the angels to prostrate to him. Now we have to look at the theology here. In this tradition, what are angels?
They are beings made of light. They have no free will to disobey it. They are constantly praising God. They exist in a state of perfect submission.
Right. They're always in a state of mental submission. They don't have egos to fight. They are 100% connected 24/7.
Okay.
So if sujud just meant mental submission or acknowledging superiority, the command would be totally redundant.
Oh, I see where you're going. If they are already in a state of submission, commanding them to submit is meaningless.
Exactly. It would be like commanding water to be wet. It doesn't add any new information. The only way the command makes sense, the only way it represents a new action for the angels, is if it demanded a specific physical act of honor, a gesture.
So it wasn't about their internal state, which was already perfect. It was about performing an external action.
A new physical protocol. And that's why Iblis, or Satan, could refuse. He wasn't refusing to feel submissive to God. He was refusing to perform the physical act of bowing to Adam.
That is a really sharp logical point. It seems like at every turn, whether it's angels or soldiers or horses, the text is pushing for a physical, tangible interpretation.
It is. And that leads us to a really common point of confusion that the documents try to clear up. And this, I think, is where the metaphor crowd gets most of their ammo. It's the difference between salat and dua.
Yes. This was a big aha moment in the reading for me, because I think a lot of people, even people who practice, blur these lines. We use the English word prayer for everything.
It's a linguistic trap. It's a huge one. In English, prayer can mean the ritual at dawn, and it can mean whispering, God help me, before a job interview. But in the Quran, these are two completely different functional categories.
The sources distinguish them as the frame and the fuel. Let's unpack that. I love this analogy.
Okay, so salat is the frame. It's the covenant. It's structured. It has times. It has rules. It involves the body. It's the chassis of the car. It gives shape and structure to your worship.
Okay, the chassis, the hardware.
Right. Dua, on the other hand, is the fuel. It's the call. It's spontaneous. It's unstructured. It's personal. It can happen anytime, anywhere, in any state. It's the raw energy.
And the abstractors, as the source calls them, they try to mix these up.
They try to replace the frame with the fuel. They say, because I have dua, because I can talk to God anytime, I don't need salat. I don't need the ritual. They think the fuel's enough.
But the Quran treats them as separate things.
Completely separate. And the expert source walks through what they call forensic case studies of dua in the Quran to prove that dua cannot be salat.
Let's look the forensics. The most vivid one involves a whale.
Prophet Yunus Jonah, verse 21.87. He is swallowed by the whale. He is in the belly of the beast in the depths of the ocean.
Okay, really picture that. It's pitch black. It's slimy. There's stomach acid. He is tumbling around in the ocean depths. No sense of up or down.
Exactly. Now, think about the requirements of Salat we just discussed.
Again,
So physically, Salat is impossible.
it's off the table.
Completely. But does he lose his connection to God? No. He calls out in the triple darkness, "There is no God but you, glory to you, I have been of the wrongdoers."
And what does the Quran call that?
It calls it a nida, a kol. It's a dua, it's pure fuel.
So if salat and dua were the same thing, Jonah would have been out of luck. He would have been cut off.
He would have been. If prayer required the ritual, Jonah would be spiritually abandoned. But because dua is the fuel, the formless emergency connection, it works even inside a whale. But that doesn't mean the frame, Salat, isn't necessary when you aren't in a whale.
That makes total sense. One is for structure, the other is for emergencies or just constant conversation.
And they have different verbs, different contexts.
What about Maryam? Mary, that's another example they use.
This is another powerful one, and it's very human. Verse 19.23. She is in the throes of labor pains. She's alone, clinging to the trunk of a palm tree.
I can't imagine a more physically overwhelming moment than childbirth, especially alone in the desert.
It is raw intensity, pain, fear, and she cries out, "Oh, I wish I had died before this and was in oblivion, forgotten."
That is a dark thought. That is pure pain speaking.
It is. That cry, that is a dua. It's a spontaneous cry of the soul to her Lord. Now contrast that with verse 3.43, where she was commanded earlier in her life by the angels to bow and prostrate in the temple. That was Salat.
I see. The temple command was structured, disciplined, a physical ritual. The labor cry was spontaneous, emotional, unstructured.
Exactly. The source argues that you cannot confuse a ritualistic command to bow in a temple with a woman's desperate cry during childbirth. They are two different modes of being with God.
So the metaphor crowd tries to say.
They try to say the cry is the prayer, so I don't need the bow. The Quran says you need both. They serve different purposes. There are other examples too. Zachariah's private call needed 8 amkafiya, Pharaoh's wife calling out from under his tyranny. All these are desperate personal calls. They're dua.
So you need the chassis to drive the car, and you need the fuel to run the engine.
And if you try to drive the gas without the car, you're just spilling fuel on the ground. You aren't going anywhere. You have no structure, no direction.
That is a perfect transition to our next pillar. Because if Salat is the vehicle, Siyam fasting is, well, it's maintenance, it's the tune-up. But there's a massive controversy here too.
Oh, the silence argument. I see
Well,
this one all the time on social media. It's very popular.
I've heard it too. Fasting isn't about food. It's about fasting from bad words. It's about silence. It's about fasting from anger.
And again, you have to ask, why is that interpretation so popular?
Well, because it sounds noble. I'm doing something deep and spiritual, not just starving myself. But also, let's be real.
Let's be real.
It's way easier to say, I'm not going to say bad words today, than it is to go 14 or 15 hours without water in the summer.
There it is. It's the path of least resistance, disguised as the higher path. And the people who argue this, they point to, again, Maryam.
Right. Doesn't the Quran say she fasted, but she just stopped talking? That seems like a slam dunk for their argument.
It does. It absolutely does. In verse 19.26, when she's with the baby Jesus, she's told to say, "I have vowed a psalm to the most merciful, so I will not speak today to any human."
See, Psalm means silence. Case closed.
Right.
Not so fast.
The source material pulls out the magnifying glass on the linguistics here, and this is really crucial. The word psalm appears exactly once in the entire Quran.
Only once.
Only once,
Yeah.
right there for Maryam. And in that very sentence, it defines itself as allow not to speak. It is a specific, unique event for her specific situation, where she can't explain the miracle baby, so she stays silent.
Okay, so that's a one-off. But what about the fasting for everyone else? You know, Ramadan.
When the Quran talks about the ritual for the believers, the month-long fast, it uses a different word. It uses as Siyam.
Siyam, not Psalm.
Different word, different rules. And for this, we go to verse 2.187. This is what the source calls the biological proof.
Okay, walk us through it, the biology of fasting.
The verse is giving the rules for the night of fasting. It says, "It has been made lawful for you on the night of the fast to have sexual relations with your wives." Okay, pretty physical.
Very physical.
And then it says, "Eat and drink until the white thread of dawn is distinct from the black thread."
Okay, logic time.
The logic is brutal here. The verse is giving you permission to eat and drink all night. if Siyam meant silence, why would it be talking about eating and drinking?
Laughs. I'm gonna break my vow of silence with a sandwich.
Exactly. You don't eat a sandwich to break a vow of silence, you start talking. You eat a sandwich to break a physical fast. The command is explicitly biological. It talks about sex. It talks about food. It talks about water. These are bodily functions.
So trying to turn Siyam into silence is...
It's a dodge. The source argues that it's just a way to avoid the discomfort of being hungry and thirsty. It's spiritualizing laziness. It's saying, I'm too evolved to skip lunch, when really, you just don't want to skip lunch.
That's a heavy accusation. But I get it. The physical reality of hunger is undeniable. It's a very humbling, very real experience. You can't fake a growling stomach. You can fake spiritual silence.
You can absolutely fake internal purity. And that leads right into the next pillar, where the consequences of this spiritualizing aren't just personal, they're societal. We're talking about Zakat charity.
This is where the rubber meets the road. Or I guess where the wallet meets the hand.
That's a good way to put it. Now, applying the metaphor logic to Zakat, what do you get? People say Zakat comes from a root meaning to purify or to grow. So I don't need my wealth, I just need to purify my soul. I need to have internal integrity.
Internal integrity? Who doesn't want integrity? That sounds great. My Zakat is being a good person.
It sounds lovely. Who can argue with integrity? But the source drops what it calls the employee argument from verse 9.60, and this just destroys the abstract view.
The employee argument, what's that?
Verse 9.60 is basically a budget allocation document. It lists the 8 specific categories of people who are eligible to receive Zakat funds.
Okay, who's on the list?
It includes the poor, the needy, those in debt, travelers, freeing captives, and sowe. This is the key. Those employed to collect it.
So tax collectors, administrators, bureaucrats.
Exactly. There is a payroll, a staff. Now, the expert in our source asks, how do you hire a staff member to go around collecting people's internal integrity?
Laughs. I'm picturing that. Knock on the door. Hello, sir. I'm here from the Zakat office. Could you please fill this bag with your good vibes?
I have a quota of purification to collect by 5 p.m. It's absurd. You cannot hire a staff member to collect a feeling.
No.
And more importantly, you cannot take integrity and hand it to a traveler who is stuck on the road with a broken down car.
Here's some purity. Hope that buys you a bus ticket.
Right. You cannot take purification and buy food for a starving family. The verb used in the Quran for giving zakat is atu, to hand over, to give. It implies a physical transfer of wealth.
So zakat isn't a feeling, it's an economic system.
It's a mandatory social safety net. And this is where the semantic deletion concept gets really scary. If you interpret zakat as just being a good person, you have effectively deleted the welfare system of the community. You've removed the right of the poor to eat.
That's a sobering thought. We're not just playing word games here. These interpretations have a body count. If zakat is a metaphor, the poor starve.
Precisely. The manual protects the vulnerable. The metaphor protects the rich man's wallet while letting him feel spiritual.
Wow, that puts a very different spin on it. It's not just about personal practice anymore.
It's about social justice. And that brings us to the final physical proof, Hajj, the pilgrimage.
The ultimate road trip.
The ultimate physical journey. Now, the abstract crowd might try to say Hajj is a journey to the center of the self, a pilgrimage of the heart.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a retreat in Malibu with that title that costs $10,000.
I'm sure there is. But verse 22.27 is having none of it. It commands people to come on foot and on every lean camel from every distant pass.
The camel argument.
The camel argument. You cannot arrive at a metaphorical state of mind on a physical camel.
No, you can't.
The text speaks of geography, distant passes. It speaks of a specific site, makan. It speaks of tawaf circling a specific physical house. A state of mind doesn't have GPS coordinates.
You can't circle your own good intentions.
You can't. And it also mentions the sacrifice too, right? The meat.
Yes, the sacrifice.
Verse 22.37. This is interesting because it acknowledges the spiritual side and the physical side. It says, their meat will not reach Allah, nor will their blood. But what reaches him is piety from you.
See, someone might read that and say, aha. It says the meat doesn't reach God. It's all about the piety. The physical ritual doesn't matter.
And that's a common misreading, according to the source. The source counters, the piety is the goal, but the ritual is the vehicle. Why does the verse still command the sacrifice? So that the poor can eat the meat.
Right. If you delete the physical ritual because only piety matters, the poor don't get fed. The piety doesn't fill their stomachs.
Again, the physical action serves a real-world social purpose. You can't separate the soul of the action from the body of the action. The body is what delivers the benefit to the community.
So we've gone through the pillars. Salat is a battlefield drill. Dua is a cry in the dark. Siyam is an empty stomach. Zakat is a hired collector. Hajj is a lean camel. The pattern is, it's undeniable.
It's overwhelmingly physical. It's tactile. It's gritty. It's real. It involves sweat and hunger and money and travel.
So here is my question. Why? We've touched on this, but let's go deeper. Why is there this modern push to abstract it all away? And more importantly, why does the source material fight back so hard? What's really at stake here?
So what is the danger of creating a religion that demands nothing of you but good feelings? The source argues that this abstraction isn't deep spirituality. It's actually a form of escape.
Escape from what?
Escape from the difficulty. Escape from the discipline. Escape from the work of being a believer in the real world. Think about it. It's hard to wake up at dawn when it's cold to pray.
Yeah.
It's hard to give away your hard-earned money when you have bills to pay. It's hard to starve yourself for 30 days. It's hard to travel across the world and deal with crowds and logistics. These things are difficult.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to just sit on my couch and feel connected.
Exactly. You turn these things into metaphors. You get to keep the label of being faithful without doing any of the work. You get the identity without the discipline. The source calls it a non-committal philosophy. It's religion light.
That hits home. It's like saying you're an athlete because you watch sports and feel athletic in your heart, but you never actually go to the gym.
That is the perfect analogy. The Kitabun Mubin, the clear book, is the gym. It's the training manual. It's trying to build a specific type of person, and through that, a specific type of community.
And what kind of community is that?
One that is disciplined, that's Salat. One that is empathetic, that understands hunger, that's Siyam. One that is generous and economically just, that's Zakat. And one that is united, that comes together from all corners of the earth, that's Hajj. These physical actions build the character of the society.
And the social justice angle we mentioned earlier, that's really the clincher for me. The idea that this isn't just about my personal journey.
It's the most tangible consequence. The sources argue that God didn't send a book just to make us feel good inside. He sent a book to establish justice on earth. And justice requires action.
Right.
You can't feed the hungry with a metaphor. You can't protect the weak with a state of mind. You can't build a just society on good vibes. You need physical systems. You need protocols. You need a manual.
So when these interpreters fight for the physical meaning, they aren't just being pedantic about grammar or, being old-fashioned.
No.
They are fighting for the survival of the community's safety net. They're fighting for the very purpose of the revelation.
They're fighting for the religion's ability to impact reality. If you delete the physical commands, the religion retires from the real world and just lives in your head. It becomes a hobby. And according to these sources, that is not what the Kitabun Mubin was sent for.
This has been intense. I mean, we really unpacked a lot here. It's a completely different way of looking at faith than what's popular today.
It's a challenging perspective for sure. We went from the etymology of horse racing to the logistics of ancient warfare and the economics of social welfare.
I want to circle back to where we started. That mission statement, Kitabun Mubin.
Yes, the clear book.
If there is one takeaway from this entire deep dive, it's that the sources believe that clarity demands action.
That's the core of it. If the instructions are clear, wash your face, pay the collector, fast until sunset, go on the camel, then our job is to listen and obey, not to reinterpret until the command disappears into a comfortable mist.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, when we read these texts, or really any instruction in life, how much of our interpretation is actually just us trying to wiggle out of doing the hard work?
That is the uncomfortable question, isn't it? It's the final provocative thought the sources leave us with. At what point does interpretation become deletion? At what point do we stop following the book and start following our own convenient, custom-made definitions of it?
A question worth chewing on. And for those of you listening who want to see these verses for yourselves, go look them up. You don't have to take our word for it. Check out verse 4.102 for the battlefield prayer.
Check out 9.60 for the Zakat collectors. Read 2.187 about fasting.
See if the manual speaks to you as clearly as the sources we looked at today say it does.
It's always best to go to the source.
Exactly. Thanks for diving deep with us today. It's been a real workout mentally and, well, mostly mentally for us, but physically for the text.
Indeed.